Husband abandoned pregnant me for having a girl. His comeback will shock you. My husband abandoned me for having a daughter instead of a son. His furious Reddit rant calling our baby the thing, while flaunting his affair became the evidence that crushed him in court. One toxic comment turned his revenge plot into my complete triumph. Watch until the end to see the most satisfying self-destruction ever recorded. My husband left me because our baby was a girl, but when he tried to destroy me in court, his own pathetic meltdown on Reddit became the smoking gun that annihilated his custody case and exposed him as the monster he truly was. This isn't just another divorce story. It's the ultimate tale of how toxic masculinity and family misogyny created their own destruction when they underestimated a mother's determination to protect her child from people who saw her as defective for being born female. For 4 years of marriage, I had navigated the delicate balance of loving my husband while tolerating his mother's subtle disapproval and barely concealed hostility. We weren't enemies, but we were never allies either, existing in that uncomfortable space where politeness masks fundamental incompatibility. She tolerated me because I made her son happy, and I tolerated her because family harmony seemed more important than addressing the underlying tension that poisoned every interaction. The red flags had been waving for years, disguised as family humor that made my skin crawl, but that I felt powerless to challenge. If your first baby is a girl, she won't be accepted because everyone else had boys first. They would joke at family gatherings, their laughter carrying an undertone of seriousness that made my stomach twist. The implication was clear. Daughters were disappointments, consolation prizes, genetic failures that didn't carry the same value as sons who could continue the family name and legacy. I had laughed along with their jokes because challenging them would have branded me as oversensitive or unable to take family humor, but every joke felt like a warning about what would happen if I failed to produce the male heir they expected. The pressure was subtle but constant, creating an atmosphere where my future child's worth would be determined by chromosomes completely outside my control. When we finally started trying for a baby after months of planning and preparation, the excitement was intoxicating but tinged with anxiety about meeting their expectations. We approached conception with scientific precision, tracking my cycle and scheduling intimacy for optimal fertility windows because we knew that infertility ran in my family and time was potentially working against us. Every negative pregnancy test felt like a failure, and every month that passed increased the pressure to succeed. The moment we saw those 2 pink lines, our joy was explosive and pure, the kind of happiness that makes you forget every worry and doubt that led to that moment. We dove headfirst into all the typical new parent conversations, nursery themes, baby names, gender predictions, and playful arguments about whether we were carrying a future football star or a little princess. My husband talked constantly about wanting a son who could be a strong leader for younger siblings and carry forward the family name, while I fantasized about having a daughter I could dress up and share matching outfits with. Our gender predictions became a running game where he would refer to the baby as our son, while I insisted we were having our daughter. We even created an elaborate chart based on old wives' tales, the ring test, Chinese calendar, heartbeat predictions, and pregnancy cravings, turning our anticipation into a fun competition that brought us closer together as we waited for the definitive answer. When the results came back 50-50ths, our excitement reached fever pitch because neither of us had a clear advantage in our playful bet. We were about to discover that some games have consequences far more serious than either player ever imagined. No one expected that finding my husband's goodbye note would be the worst betrayal possible until his psychotic mother accused me of manipulating my own baby's DNA and revealed the sick depths of their family's misogyny. The gender scan that should have been our celebration became the murder of our marriage, proving that some families don't see daughters as blessings but as genetic failures worthy of complete abandonment. The ultrasound appointment itself had been pure magic. When the technician announced, "It's a girl," my husband's face lit up with genuine joy and excitement. He squeezed my hand, kissed my forehead, and whispered about how lucky he felt to be raising a daughter with me. For those precious moments in the darkened room, staring at our baby's profile on the screen, we were the perfect expecting couple celebrating the miracle of new life together. That night, we called our families to share the wonderful news. My family erupted with excitement, already planning shopping trips and nursery decorating sessions. But when we called his family, something shifted in the atmosphere. After the initial congratulations, his mother asked to speak with him privately, and what followed was an hour-long conversation that stretched deep into the night while I went to bed alone, sensing that something fundamental had changed. I woke up to an empty house and a note on his nightstand that shattered my world. Someone would be by later to collect his belongings. The clinical coldness of those words hit me like a physical blow. No explanation, no goodbye, just the promise that our life together was being dismantled by strangers. When I tried to call him, I discovered he had already blocked my number, erasing me from his life with the efficiency of someone deleting spam. Desperate for answers, I called his mother, and she answered on the first ring as if she had been waiting for this moment. Before I could even speak, she launched into a vicious attack, calling me a manipulative bitch who had ruined her son's reputation with my inexcusable behaviors and tendencies. Her words poured out like acid, years of barely contained hatred finally finding their target. When I demanded to know what I had supposedly done, her accusations revealed a level of delusion that defied rational thought. She claimed I had predetermined our baby's gender by forcing my husband to have sex on specific days according to the Chinese calendar, as if I possessed some mystical power to control which chromosome would fertilize my egg. The absurdity was breathtaking. She genuinely believed I had manipulated basic biology to spite their family. Her interrogation became increasingly unhinged as she demanded details about our sex positions, smugly informing me that my husband had already revealed everything and that certain positions supposedly increased the likelihood of female babies. The violation of having my intimate life dissected and weaponized by this woman made my skin crawl, but her twisted logic was just beginning to unfold. The conversation reached its peak of insanity when she accused my clear preference for my family name as evidence of my manipulative master plan, as if choosing my baby's gender was part of some elaborate scheme to destroy their bloodline. Her final words before hanging up revealed the true depth of their toxicity. She was glad to finally be rid of me and my manipulative ways. As I sat in the silence of my empty house, processing the reality that my marriage had been destroyed over a chromosome I couldn't control, one terrifying truth became clear. These people had never seen me as family. They had seen me as a breeding vessel whose only value was producing male heirs, and my failure to deliver had made me expendable. Right at that moment, when I cornered my husband outside his workplace, I discovered that the man I married had been completely brainwashed by his mother and the divorce papers were written before our daughter was even conceived. The conversation that followed revealed a level of psychological manipulation so twisted that it transformed a loving father into a stranger who would abandon his pregnant wife over something as scientifically ridiculous as blaming her for producing the wrong chromosome. I had spent sleepless nights planning this confrontation, knowing that catching him at work might be my only chance to get answers before he disappeared completely from our lives. When I saw him walking to his car, looking like a man carrying the weight of someone else's decisions, I knew that whatever had happened during that hour-long phone call with his mother had fundamentally changed him into someone I no longer recognized. "I need to know why," I said, blocking his path to the car. "I need to understand how you can abandon your pregnant wife and daughter over something I had no control over." The exhaustion in his eyes was immediate and overwhelming, as if maintaining his mother's narrative required more energy than he possessed. His confession came pouring out like water from a broken dam. He admitted that he had been genuinely excited about having a daughter, that the moment in the ultrasound room had filled him with pure joy and anticipation. But his mother's reaction had been swift and brutal, immediately launching into accusations about my manipulative nature and demanding that he choose between his toxic family and his pregnant wife. The most devastating revelation was that his mother had already prepared divorce papers before our conversation even began. She had been planning this nuclear option for years, waiting for any excuse to remove me from their family permanently. The gender of our baby wasn't the real issue. It was simply the trigger she had been waiting for to execute a plan that had been brewing since the day I married her son. I tried desperately to salvage what remained of our marriage, offering to cut his mother out of our lives completely if it meant we could raise our daughter together away from her toxic influence. "We can move across the country," I pleaded. "We can start fresh, just the three of us, away from all of this insanity." The hope in my voice was pathetic. But I had grown up without a father and desperately wanted my daughter to have a different experience. But his response revealed how completely she had poisoned his mind against me. He looked at me with eyes that had once held love and now reflected nothing but manufactured disgust. "I realize now how conniving and manipulative and abusive you've been throughout our entire relationship," he said, repeating his mother's words like a programmed robot. "I actually want to go through with the divorce." The final blow came when he referred to our daughter, the baby he had been excited about just days earlier, as the thing that's growing inside of you. Those words hit me like a physical assault, revealing that his mother had successfully convinced him to view our child not as his daughter but as evidence of my supposed manipulation and deceit. In that moment, standing in a parking lot listening to my husband regurgitate his mother's hatred like gospel truth, I realized that the man I had married was gone. He had been replaced by a hollow shell program to repeat toxic talking points. And no amount of love or logic could bring back the person who had once held my hand during ultrasounds and dreamed about raising our daughter together. The tragedy wasn't just that I was losing my husband, it was that my daughter was losing a father who had been stolen from her by a grandmother who saw her as worthless before she was even born. But the tragedy was about to escalate into something far more sinister just when I thought my nightmare couldn't get worse. I discovered that my husband and his mother were plotting to steal my baby in court, even though they didn't even want her. The phone call from my sister-in-law would reveal a conspiracy so twisted that it defied logic. They planned to take custody of a daughter they considered worthless, just to ensure I couldn't raise her with love and dignity. The call came from my brother-in-law's wife, the one family member who had always treated me with genuine kindness throughout my pregnancy. Her voice was shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief as she delivered news that would send my world spiraling into a new level of horror. "I overheard something at Sunday dinner that you need to know about," she said. "They're planning to blindside you in court." The details she revealed were so calculated and cruel that they took my breath away. My mother-in-law and husband had been secretly meeting with lawyers, strategizing ways to take full custody of my daughter while painting me as an unfit mother. They had been building a case based on fabricated evidence and twisted interpretations of normal pregnancy behavior, turning my morning sickness and food aversions into signs of mental instability. When I confronted my husband directly about this betrayal, his response revealed the depth of his psychological transformation. "I realized I don't want any of my offspring to be raised by such a manipulative freak," he said with the cold detachment of someone reciting a script. "Even though I don't actually want her, I'm sure I can grow to love her again." The contradiction in his words was staggering. He didn't want our daughter, but was willing to steal her just to deny me the chance to raise her. The twisted logic of their plan became clear. They saw my daughter as damaged goods because of her gender, but they couldn't bear the thought of me raising her to believe she was valuable and loved. Their solution was to take custody and ensure she grew up knowing she was unwanted, a living reminder of genetic failure in a family that measured worth by chromosome composition. The psychological warfare was expertly designed to maximize my suffering while maintaining their public image as concerned family members. They would present themselves to the court as loving grandparents and a devoted father trying to protect an innocent child from her unstable mother, while secretly planning to raise her in an environment where she would never feel truly wanted or valued. My sister-in-law's voice broke as she continued her warning. "They've already found lawyers who specialize in these kinds of cases. They're planning to argue that you're emotionally unstable and that the baby would be better off with them." The irony was devastating. The people who had abandoned us because of her gender were now positioning themselves as her saviors. The most chilling aspect of their plan was how they intended to use my daughter as a weapon against me for the rest of my life. Even if custody was split 50-50ths, they would have unlimited opportunities to poison her mind against me, to tell her that her mother was the reason she was unwanted, to ensure she grew up believing she was a burden rather than a blessing. As I processed the full scope of their conspiracy, one terrifying reality became clear. They weren't fighting for custody because they loved my daughter. They were fighting to ensure she would never experience the love and acceptance she deserved. Their plan was to steal her not to save her, but to guarantee she would grow up as damaged and bitter as they were. The battle lines were drawn, and I was about to face the fight of my life against people who had weaponized the legal system to continue their psychological abuse through an innocent child who had committed no crime except being born female. No one expected that my husband's attempt to destroy my reputation online would become the nuclear weapon that obliterated his own custody case and exposed him as the monster he truly was. His unhinged Reddit rant, filled with admissions of already having a new girlfriend and referring to our daughter as the fetus, became the smoking gun that handed me total victory while revealing the depths of his toxicity to the entire internet. The discovery of his comment came through the most ironic twist of fate imaginable. He had found my original Reddit post through a podcast his new girlfriend was listening to, proving that not only had he already moved on romantically, but he was so stupid that he decided to publicly incriminate himself where thousands of people could screenshot his confession forever. His comment read like the manifesto of a man having a complete psychological breakdown. What the fuck is wrong with you? Aspen. I loved you, and I loved our daughter. He screamed into the digital void, immediately contradicting himself by proceeding to demonstrate the exact opposite through every word that followed. The all-caps fury and excessive exclamation points painted the picture of someone completely unhinged and desperate to control a narrative that had already escaped his grasp. The self-incrimination was breathtaking in its stupidity. He admitted to doting on me like fucking Prince Charming, while simultaneously complaining that I was never grateful enough for his supposed devotion. His version of being a loving husband included whining about my pregnancy symptoms like they were personal attacks against him, revealing the kind of selfishness that judges absolutely despise in custody cases. His complaints about normal pregnancy behavior became evidence of his complete unfitness as a father. He was outraged that I had developed aversions to eggs and didn't want to eat sushi during pregnancy, framing basic pregnancy safety as manipulation designed to inconvenience him. I don't want to go to Sunday dinner, I'm not up to it tonight. Let's not get sushi for dinner because it's bad for the baby. He mocked, apparently unable to comprehend that pregnant women prioritize their baby's health over his dining preferences. But the comment that sealed his fate was his reference to our daughter as "fuck the fetus," revealing that despite his claims of love, he viewed our child as nothing more than an obstacle to his comfort. Those 3 words alone would be enough to destroy any judge's faith in his parental capabilities, but he wasn't finished destroying himself yet. The bombshell that exploded his entire case was his casual mention of discovering my post through a podcast my girlfriend listens to. Not only had he already moved on to another relationship while claiming to fight for custody of our daughter, but he was stupid enough to admit it in writing on a public forum where it would be preserved forever as evidence of his character. His final threat about seeing me in court, bitch, and his prediction that I would lose it all like I did, became the punchline to his own joke. Every word of his unhinged rant would be submitted as evidence, every threat documented, every admission of his true feelings about our daughter preserved for judicial review. The beautiful irony was perfect. In his desperate attempt to paint me as manipulative and controlling, he had created an unfiltered record of his own toxicity, selfishness, and complete unfitness as a parent. His rage had become my salvation, his words the weapon that would destroy his custody case and protect my daughter from growing up with a father who called her the fetus while dating other women. Justice was about to be served by his own stupidity, and I couldn't have written a better ending if I had tried. Right at that moment, when my husband's unhinged Reddit rant landed on my lawyer's desk, I realized that his attempt to humiliate me online had backfired so spectacularly that it handed me total victory in court and the perfect revenge. Watching him destroy himself with his own words. The legal battle that had terrified me for months became a foregone conclusion the moment he called our daughter the fetus, while admitting to already having a new girlfriend in a public forum that would preserve his toxicity forever. My lawyer's reaction to his comment was priceless. She read it with growing amazement, occasionally chuckling at the sheer stupidity of someone documenting their own character flaws in such vivid detail. "I've been practicing family law for 20 years, she said, and I've never seen someone hand their opponent such perfect evidence. This comment alone destroys any credibility he might have had with a judge." The court hearing became a masterclass in legal humiliation. Every word of his Reddit rant was submitted as evidence, every threat documented, every admission of his true feelings about our daughter preserved for judicial review. When the judge read his reference to "fuck the fetus" aloud in the courtroom, the collective gasp from the gallery was audible. His own mother visibly cringed as her son's words were dissected and analyzed, revealing the monster she had helped create. His lawyer tried desperately to distance him from the comment, claiming it was written in a moment of emotional distress and didn't reflect his true feelings. But the judge's response was swift and brutal. A man who refers to his unborn daughter as the fetus and admits to dating other women while fighting for custody has revealed exactly who he is. This court will not place a child in the care of someone who views her as disposable. The custody ruling was unanimous and absolute. I was granted full custody with no visitation rights for him until he completed extensive therapy and anger management requirements that essentially guaranteed my daughter would never have to endure his toxicity. The judge's final words still echo in my memory. Mr. Johnson's own words have demonstrated his unfitness as a parent. This child deserves better. The birth of my daughter 3 weeks later became the healing balm my soul desperately needed. Holding her tiny perfect form, seeing her father's features combined with my own, I felt nothing but overwhelming love and protection. She was beautiful, healthy, and completely mind-free from the toxic family that had rejected her before she was even born. The Reddit community that had supported me throughout this nightmare became my extended family, connecting me with resources, legal advice, and emotional support that sustained me through the darkest period of my life. Strangers from around the world rallied around us, proving that sometimes the internet can be a force for genuine good. My daughter will grow up knowing she was wanted, loved, and protected from people who saw her as defective for being female. She'll never have to endure family gatherings where her worth is questioned or listen to jokes about daughters being disappointments. Most importantly, she'll never have to know that her father called her the fetus, while planning to steal her from the mother who fought to protect her. The final irony remains perfect. In his desperate attempt to destroy me, my ex-husband became the architect of his own downfall, using his own words to build the case that freed us both from his toxicity forever. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting horrible people reveal who they truly are, then stepping back and watching them face the consequences of their own choices. The worst people always plant the seeds of their own destruction. I learned that protecting your children means staying quiet while toxic people expose themselves through their own stupidity. The sweetest justice isn't revenge, it's watching enemies destroy themselves while you create the loving family they said you'd never deserve, proving that daughters are blessings, not burdens. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button to help others find it. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And subscribe to join our community of resilient souls who've learned that sometimes being underestimated is your greatest superpower. Together, we're writing new endings to old stories, and I can't wait to share the next chapter with you.